Have you ever wondered how much difference market research can make to your business, especially for those of us in the cannabis industry and where time and resources are of the utmost importance? If so, you are in luck. Today, I have dusted off the Cannabis Marketing Live All Puff No Fluff show because I felt like there was an interview that was absolutely worth having and someone that was worth sharing with you. So, joining me today is Lara Fordis of Fordis Consulting. So, welcome, Laura. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Kendra. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. And thank you for being here. I'm really excited that you were available to join me because honestly, market research is something that I've always appreciated as a marketer, and I've seen it make such a big difference for businesses that bring it as a part of what they're doing and it's part of their strategy that I'm excited that you're here to help share this with us today. So, welcome. To kick off, can you tell people a little bit about who you are and what Fordis Consulting is?
Sure. My name is Lara Fordis. I've been in market research since 1996, which is hard to believe. My first 15 years was in the regular agency side of the business, working with Fortune 500 companies. At that time, I decided around 15 years in that market research shouldn't be the sole purview of Fortune 500 companies and decided to go out on my own, making a niche of taking on the clients that were really too small for a typical agency or a typical company to take on. And so I just started small, and a lot of my origins in market research are with CPG and with small companies.
And how did you find your way into the cannabis industry? Because I know you've worked with a lot of companies and helped a lot of companies really make dramatically different decisions based on the data that you've uncovered for them.
Yeah, I definitely think of myself as an accidental cannabis industry person because it just so happened that I do both qualitative and quantitative research. Quantitative's like the numbers, and qualitative's focus groups and interviews. And because I do both, I get referred to companies who don't really know what they want or have a mixed methodology need. And that's what happened in this case, that a focus group facility here in Denver that refers me to clients who need a moderator. I spoke with someone and they had a project that was more virtual in scope, and it was for a CBD company. And then, but they also had cannabis clients. So they were happy enough with my work on CBD that they referred me to cannabis. And it snowballed that way. And what I thought would be a liability, which is my lack of personal experience with cannabis, actually ended up being a benefit because
Mhm.
it forced me to ask a lot of questions and get granular in a way that when someone says, or you know what it's like, and I could genuinely say, no, I don't know what it's like. You're going to have to explain it to me in really specific terms. So, ironically, it ended up serving me to an advantage, and the business has just grown incrementally since in cannabis specifically, more so than in other industries.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. And having worked with so many different cannabis companies, I can and talk to so many different ones during at events and networking over the years. It's just amazing how much having access to this data would have made a difference from product ideas to marketing campaigns. It's just fascinating. One of the questions I have for you is how are brands and businesses and investors using market research to make better decisions in this space?
I can only speak to the clients that I know about, which I'm proud to say seem to be making good decisions with the market research, because not only does not everyone have an access to market research, not everyone uses the market research to which they have access in a good way. And in a to the joke was that, oh, we spent the equivalent of buying a car on this market research report, and it's collecting dust on the shelves back from when you actually printed reports and they could collect dust on the shelves.
Mhm.
Yes, now it's just a metaphor, but still, it sometimes happens. So a lot of times for our clients, it's in product development, product optimization, testing out products, and also I work with marketing departments, so it's usually product innovation or marketing departments. Product innovation teams need to be able to test products, and
Mhm.
cannabis presents a lot of challenges in terms of safety, legality, and other things. I've carved out a niche in coming up with creative, legal, safe ways to execute product testing with bud tenders and with consumers. And obviously, the benefit of that is that they're not basing it on their employees and friends and families of employees, that they're able to extrapolate in a meaningful way from actual consumers or would be consumers of the product.
Absolutely. It's always fascinating to me how much money people will spend from marketing to products, like the whole alignment of their business, how much money people will spend on, oh, this person over there said it was a good idea, and that friend over there agreed with it.
Yeah, and there's a lot of challenges with a tendency to do research with what's called a self-selected sample. So by nature of the people that are able to participate or choose to participate, that's going to bias the results. And notoriously, that happens with companies who want to test out the market sizing of a product, but they use their Instagram followers or their Facebook friends, and they do a survey, and that's just not the way it works. Usually you've got some bias inherent to your friend group, your family group, just your sort of 3 degrees of separation. And so when you get people like that helping you to make big business decisions, sometimes it backfires. And yet sometimes clients will be self-righteous. We did a survey, but they don't really have the
Mhm.
savvy to understand that the sample is that who was surveyed and how they were surveyed is what makes a big difference.
I'm glad you brought that up because one of the things that we've relied on traditionally for both CBD and cannabis businesses in this space is a lot of the sale purchase, the PO
Mhm.
research and
Yes.
data. Can you talk a little bit about having the impact of relying on that data for your business decisions?
It's very valuable data. I don't want to knock Price Smile because point of sales data is an important part of
Mhm.
any type of market research. The problem is that oftentimes it's a checkbox. Oh, I have point of sales data. Check the market research box. And they don't realize that that's a really minuscule part of the market research box and is also sometimes taken out of context. So, the nature of most cannabis transactions at the retail level is there's an assumption that the person, excuse me, purchasing and the person consuming are the same people. So there's a one-to-one correlation. But all of us know, based on personal experience, anecdotally, otherwise, people buy for other people, people receive from other people. So, what happens, and why it's an industry issue, I consider pretty significant with market research data being so disproportionately reliant on point of sales data, is that when you're buying for other people, it looks like your purchase. So, I could be purchasing something for male pattern baldness or whatever, and the demographics of that purchase are going to show that a middle-aged woman from the Denver suburbs bought this product. Now, obviously, that's illogical. We would know that wasn't the case, but for the most part, it's invisible, so people don't catch it. So that means that it underestimates the number of people consuming cannabis, and it overestimates the amount that those people are using. And that's why I think it's dangerous to rely exclusively on POS data as your sole source of research because it's limited and it has to be taken in context.
I muted myself so we could hear you better. And we know that's important to pay attention to as well because by the time, from a marketing perspective, by the time someone's making a sale, a lot of times if they're there for a specific brand, they've had, 10 to 12 contact points with that brand and or really enthusiastic bud tender. So there's also decision points that are there that are affecting what's being purchased as well
Mhm.
before they even walk in the door. One of the other things that you've mentioned when we were chatting before is household income.
Yeah, definitely like a peeve of mine. And
Yes.
and this isn't just for the cannabis industry. This is for all industries. I am personally appalled that the household income question gets as much weight as it does still. Anyone who knows basic demographics knows that even within a zip code, you're going to have $100,000 is going to look really different. It could look like an enormous amount if you're a single person or if you're a family of four living in a small town in the Midwest. However, that same $100,000 that sounds so exciting and like, oh, they could buy anything. You place that with a family of four in Palo Alto, they're probably like below the poverty line. Like certain places, the cost of living is so different than other places. That's one factor. Then you've
Mhm.
got the people who might have two people earning an income. So you got that. Or maybe even three people with different sandwich generation households. Who knows? And then you have different cost, not just cost of living, but how many kids do you have? Do you have student loans? There's just so many variables that make household income a very outdated way of looking at someone's ability to afford a product or service. So,
Mhm.
especially in cannabis, you might have single guy making 38, 40 a year, and he may spend 10% of his income on cannabis. Who knows? And then you have people making two or three times that are spending much less than the other guy, and it's a fraction of their income. So
Yep.
I would contend that household income per se doesn't tend to make for a very good way of measuring your potential market share and whether someone's going to buy something or not.
It's so interesting because last December, I did a marketing plan for a company that was looking to apply for a medical license store in Alabama. And I'm in San Diego. And so, me looking at all of the data and all the market data I could find in Alabama, obviously the cost of living is very different there.
Mhm.
And so, trying to pull the data in terms of who the potential customers could be, you're right. I had to rely a lot less on household income or at least skew it partially because it's still a required thing that you include
Yep.
and stuff like that. But it makes a big difference at what you're looking at when you're talking the difference, like you said, between San Diego or Palo Alto or somewhere that's more expensive and a suburban town in Alabama. It was a huge
Mm.
difference, and it wouldn't have. I couldn't use the same numbers and things that are easy to toss off here in California or even Colorado in some instances as well when you start to look at household income.
Yeah, and it just doesn't correlate with things, and there's just too many variables. If I have a client that insists on a household income question, which I do, and
Mhm.
I'm if I was 20 years younger, I probably would stand on principle, but I'm a little bit more practical and mercenary at this point in my life, so I will let them have the household income question, but I will also encourage them to make some changes. Get a
Absolutely.
personal income question. Now, if someone's retired or they're a full-time mom or dad or just a stay-at-home person, that's where it gets a little bit messed up and you have to ask a follow-up question about household income. But I tend to ask personal income, or I'll ask how many people contribute to the income and how many
Mhm.
people are dependent on the income. And at least you get a little bit more of a nuanced sense of what that number means. I still would
Mhm.
contend that in surveys, questions are like real estate and you want to use them very judiciously because
Mhm.
they're a resource. And I think there tend to be a lot better questions that are more easy to correlate with an actionable next step than is household income.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And those other questions about income make a big difference, right? If you're one of five people making $50,000 a year, your household income is going to be
Quarter million.
250,000.
Yeah, that looks really great, but
But the
not.
reality is very different. They wouldn't expect that you'd be a member of like the real world.
Yeah, and even in it, sometimes people like get help from their parents or get help from another source or whatever. So does that is that like your household income? At what age do you switch from being your income is your income to this is my household income? Like I have a kid in college, so I wonder about that. Like how would he interpret that if you were asking him what his income was? his household income, to take a guess. Heck, even I have to take a guess.
Absolutely. So one of the things that I loved about talking with you before, which is one of the reasons why I went to interview you now, is just the like creative approach you take to cannabis research, because we all know there's just a huge number of laws across the country that we need to follow and that need to be adhered to state by state in terms of what we can do and what we can't do and what's going to be allowed. So how do those laws translate into the creativity that you've had to do and use when it comes to cannabis?
I have definitely done some very creative things in an effort to get people to try certain products. Probably one of the more creative things is that in certain parts of California, you can only consume cannabis essentially if you're in a home, you're in someone's residence. And what I figured out is that an RV is a residence. People live in RVs, they're zoned as a domiciles. I could use RVs that were zoned as residences and conduct research in them when they are not on city streets. So they would have to be in someone's driveway or under personal property. And I was able to do, I think we did 26 in depth interviews where we tried product, and the reason that I like it is not everyone likes to have people into their homes in a sort of ethnographic context, especially if they have kids or something. So we were able to get a really nice cross section of people by making the RV, converting it into a research vehicle for purposes of trying product safely and legally, so that we knew that everyone was in compliance and safe, most importantly.
It's such a creative way to approach that in
Yeah.
terms of using that. Yeah, for sure. Like, just it's such a, I don't want to say scrappy, but definitely scrappy yet sophisticated a way to approach that research and to get the
Yeah.
answers that your client was looking for.
And different places have different laws. There are some places where it would be great to be in a vehicle, but if you're consuming, you've got to move every 30 minutes. Taking a break, timing your research to be able to move your vehicle every 30 minutes. Like there's just like a lot of really strange rules that you wouldn't have if this was a granola bar or some innocuous substance. I've acquired a lot of trivial pursuit worthy knowledge about cannabis
That,
laws.
yeah, can you imagine trying to do a taste test where there or a focus group where you have to move your vehicle every 30 minutes?
Yeah, but it's doable.
How many challenges can you pile on top of one focus, one data project?
Yeah, yeah, and that's not typical. That's not like my bread and butter isn't in total crazy innovative ways to conduct cannabis research. And then there's places where there are cannabis lounges, but sometimes people say, why can't you rent an Airbnb, like a cool Airbnb? Oh, don't think I didn't think of that. But usually if an Airbnb, you can't have parties, you can't have gatherings, or you can't have commercial photography. So there's lots of ways that seem like they'd be good ideas, or you're going to pay $4,000 for event insurance coverage. So I've thought of a lot of different ideas, and that's the only reason I have had to get scrappy, is because you're limited in what the loopholes are to be able to do creative research.
It's funny, I don't want to go down this path, but one of the things that I've definitely talked about over the years, I've done a couple of presentations on it and even created a guide about it, is how the different laws and limitations and regulations around cannabis and CBD have forced us to get more creative. Because instead of saying we can't, okay, that's actually part of how this live show came about, right? I couldn't do advertising, I couldn't do these things, like all these things you couldn't do. What can you do? What if I wanted to? What if I could? And that's exactly the same thing you did with your approach and how you approach this is, okay, yeah, here's all the things you can't do, but what if? what else is possible? And I love that creativity that you bring to something that, let's be clear, market research always sounds a little stodgy.
Yeah, yeah, when I find out that someone in one of my studies, cannabis related studies, oftentimes this is the first time they've participated in a focus group. It's the first time they've done an interview or product taste test. And I think, wow, am I setting a really high bar for how interesting market research is going to be next time they get pulled in to evaluate mutual fund literature that people throw away that's sent in them. It's going to be a very different vibe to the study. Oh, for some reason, I can't hear you.
That is because the trash man is outside my door and decided to come 2 hours late today.
Oh,
I schedule these things very carefully around time, and they surprised me. So I
no
muted
problem.
myself. Along those lines, one of the things that is very common when we are doing market research and when we're talking about cannabis is that a lot of times people will align cannabis with alcohol. And oh, it's going to be very similar to alcohol when you do X. How do you find market research for cannabis is different or needs to be different from that approach used in alcohol or other CPG sectors?
Certainly, it differs radically from other CPG sectors that aren't where it's not a controlled substance or a mood altering substance. Alcohol has some nuances, some similarities in terms of challenges that you're restricted on where you can do them, except for you can do them in you have a lot more options available for alcohol than you do for cannabis, but not as many as you do for granola bars or other standard products or things that you might want to try. Obviously, I'm excluding the pharmaceutical industry. I know they have a lot of rigidity around that, but that there's also a lot of money in it, so that there's a lot of facilities and consultants so I have no doubt that they have that down to a literal science. But cannabis, on the other hand, is on the opposite end of the spectrum in terms of this prescriptive nature of the kind of research you can do and the hurdles you have and the litmus test for success and data reliability. It's still wild west in cannabis. And I'm hoping that as the industry matures, perceived need and the value of market research will similarly grow. But I still find that usually market research is a Hail Mary because people don't want to go on their gut feeling or hunches, and they want to have some data to guide the decision making, whether it's to cover their butt or just because they want to make sure they're doing the right thing for their company. So obviously I'm biased, but I'm hoping it'll take on more importance as time progresses.
I also think there's an element of investors aren't going to want to know that you made decisions because it felt right to your gut, right? That's not a bullet point you put in presentation.
Yeah, like I had a hunch. I had a gut. My intuition guided me to spend tens of thousands of dollars on this advertising campaign. Like, I don't want to be the one to deliver that news. People who care about defending their decisions and having defensible logic behind
Mhm.
their resources that they spend and the changes they make. Like, to me, that's a no thinker. But apparently not to everybody, but to me, I see the value in it because I know how much it can save in terms of stress and money and time, but particularly money. It's usually a way to save yourself a lot of money.
Absolutely. And so along those lines, what are some of the I have a few more questions before we wrap up. What are some of the common mistakes that you see cannabis companies make when it comes to market research?
I would say that on the quantitative side of things, the surveys with friends and family, Facebook, Instagram, their email list, whatever. Now, if you're with an email list, I'm not saying that's not valuable. If you're surveying your customers, it's definitely valuable. But if you're looking at a new market for a product in development, then you're going to want to use outside research. I'd say one of the interesting things I've seen, and it speaks to the just lack of market research awareness, is that cannabis companies want to reward the participants with product or swag or a discount. And so helping companies to understand that short-sighted savings, that you have to have something that has a similar dollar value to everybody, regardless of whether they like the product or the brand or not. And obviously, if what you're offering them an incentive is tied to the brand, they not only know the brand, but they're not going to participate unless they're already predisposed to liking the brand. In which case, you can't extrapolate that what who you're talking to is representative of a population at large. So that's the short-sighted savings, the self-selected surveys, the assuming everything has to be a focus group. Just they don't know any better. It's not like most people have been doing market research for a long time. But if they were at Procter and Gamble, they would know that. But that's not where most people are coming from. And so they're usually marketing people. They're not market research people. And so their knowledge of market research as a tool to be
Hmm.
a marketing ninja using market research as a tool is foreign to them.
Absolutely. One more question I have for you, too. What advice do you have for those companies that might think that market research is out of reach for them or too expensive for them?
Yeah, too expensive is that's always subjective. I used to be committed that no matter what the budget, no matter what the size, no matter what the stage of the company, I could make it work. But I've seen over time from a business point of view that you have to really be able to deliver ROI to your clients. So I I usually suggest them set up a time to talk to someone in market research who offers various services, who offers qualitative and quantitative, and just get a few perspectives of what can be done and how to go about it, and what the pros and cons of any approach are. And start small, like edibles. Start small, go slow. Maybe not the go slow part in market research. Sometimes that doesn't pan out. But I try to give people an a la carte menu of
Mhm,
options
mhm.
so that if you get to the point where you get the information and insights you need, why be locked into a huge project? Once you get it, you might as well redirect those resources to learning something else. And
Absolutely.
so I'm stylistically different than a typical agency. Am I the agency that can do absolutely everything? No, we do what we do well. And I'm always committed to referring out. If there's a solution that I see that I can't get executed, I always know someone after 25 years. I know who can execute on it.
Mhm.
So that's what I always guarantee when people speak to me, that they're going to come away knowing something that they didn't know before, and having some insight about how to gather insights that wouldn't have occurred to them had we not had a conversation.
Absolutely. I love that so much. Now, my last question for you is if you're watching and you have questions about market research and you're interested in market research for your company, Laura, how can they get a hold of you?
Probably the best thing to do is to go on LinkedIn. I've got a unique name. The spelling of my first and last name are not common, and as far as I can tell, I'm the only one, only Lara Fordis. And I would just say that get in touch with me there, or go to my website, which is fordisconsulting.com, and just reach out. I love meeting new people. I'm very passionate about market research, as you can tell. I'm not burned out on it yet, which, to my surprise, and I'm always excited to impart new knowledge. I used to mentor startup businesses and entrepreneurs, and I really like empowering people and to know what they can do themselves and what they, even if they could do, shouldn't do themselves. And so that they are set up for success. That's basically what I want. Oh no, you're muted again.
I hit it one too many times. All right, let's try this again.
Don't
Thank you so
worry.
much, Laura. Your
You're welcome.
insights are and your passion for helping companies make data-driven decisions are just absolutely phenomenal, especially when it comes to your creativity to be able to help these companies really understand where that path to profits are and how they're going to use that data to help grow their company and save all that time and resources that we see so many businesses, and I don't care what industry you're in, so many businesses waste when they don't need to. So if you took one thing away from this today, I really hope that you understand how valuable having that information up front and that market research up front can save you time and energy and money and stress down the road. So be sure to reach out to Laura if you have any questions.
Anytime.
Yeah,
Thank
absolutely.
Thanks, Kendra. I
Absolutely.
really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for being here. If you have any questions for me, you can get a hold of me at kendralosi.com. I appreciate it. And thank you for your time today. All
Thank
right.
you.
Enjoy. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.